Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call, you talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.
Dearest fantasy readers, welcome to the Dear Fantasy Reader podcast, where two best friends, Hannah and Karen, travel through the pages of our favorite romantasy novels. Join us as we take flight into the world of the Empyrean series, diving deep into the chapters, exploring characters, scenes, theories, foreshadowing, and more, taking what we've learned from the second book, Iron Flame, to reread and re-experience the first.
With that content warning and spoiler alert, we will be covering anything and everything Empyrean series to this date and any content Rebecca Yarros has given us. Also, due to the nature of these books, this podcast is rated R in content and in language.
As Rebecca Yarros says, readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to enter Baz Gaiath War College. I think that might be like my favorite thing to say every episode.
It's chills.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we jump in, I just want to take a moment to catch you guys up on some of the things going on in our lives and express just how determined we have been to get this episode out to you all. We were supposed to record it probably about 2 weeks ago now, and we've had some more extreme and some less extreme but annoying roadblocks in the way. And as you likely noticed, we did have to skip releasing last week. At the time of this recording, we really try our best not to do that, as we really value staying reliable and consistent and also transparent where appropriate, which brings us to something I'd like to share about my life for context, because I think you guys have spent 24 hours with us at this point. Karen did not know the total number. I saved that.
Wow.
But I looked, and we've released 24 hours of content. So, if you're listening to this episode and you've been here this whole time, that's a long time to spend with us. I just like to preface with a light trigger warning, SA. So if you do need to skip ahead, totally understandable. You can find where we jump right into this discussion and analysis section in the show notes. I have, and Karen, we have had to kind of halt a lot of what's going on with the pod these last couple of weeks because I was in a 6-week trial that I have waited for 7 years over something that happened to me. And just, being very brief, it did conclude in my favor, and that does make all of the things that I'm trying to clean up and catch up on in my life worth it. But it's also put us a bit behind. And then, on the lesser extreme, as we mentioned, we've tried 3 nights this week to record this episode and have had so many technical errors. That's just kind of a part of it. And I think that if we jumped right in, that it wouldn't be quite as authentic as the community that we're trying to cultivate. And just like letting you guys in and know, like, stuff goes on, like life's.
Yeah.
And I think also, especially with the context of this episode specifically, like, I wanted to make sure, and Karen was, of course, very open and understanding about that I was in the headspace to be as excited about this chapter as I normally am. And I think that a lot of people can relate to reading being a healthy way of escapism for them for a variety of different reasons. And that is one of mine. So I've been very eager to get back into this world as soon as possible because it is something that brings me a lot of joy. And I get to spend time with Karen, so that's also a big part of it.
We just like to yap about our favorite books.
Yes. And I think that was also something else I wanted to note is we also went straight from that into the Eras Tour, Miami. And I think that having that time with you, Karen, was a big reason that I'm even like mentally where I am now. Because we talked about maybe it would take me a couple weeks to be able to get back into things. But between you and Taylor Swift, it was a big help.
We do what we can.
Yeah. And then, of course, we do have other new updates, like my new bookshelf, if you are watching on Spotify or YouTube, which I'm very, very proud of.
So beautiful.
Take a moment to look at the setup I have for my Fourth Wing covers that I am obsessed with, and my little Andarna.
If you want to see a full video of the beauty of this bookshelf, go over to our Instagram. Hannah has uploaded a beautiful video of this bookshelf.
I am so proud of it. I actually had so much fun just like putting it together, and it makes me so happy just to look at it. And the most exciting announcement of all, we have accepted an invitation for a table at the Dance of the Dragon fantasy market called the Vale of Scales next month on November 23rd in Orlando, which is Fourth Wing themed.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm going to explain just the extent of how Fourth Wing themed it is, where attendees can mix violet-inspired potions, complete the Gauntlet quest, be matched to a dragon, find out their signet, complete a threshing experience, and create their own scribe book. So, as you can imagine, we are so excited.
Cannot wait.
So, if you can come see us, please do. We would absolutely love that. I can't wait to be able to do all of those things.
Oh, same.
I'm also so excited for the fact that things like that exist. Spaces where we can meet other readers. It is fantasy dragon themed, but we went to the Romantasy Con and there's definitely so much overlap. Hence, it is literally Fourth Wing themed. But the fact that there's continuously more and more of these spaces, it just makes my heart so happy.
It's so fun. And we get to meet so many incredible people. Mm-hmm. We made so many friends at the Romantasy Con, so I cannot wait to meet a bunch of new friends at this one.
And if, I feel like I consider you guys our friends at this point. Again, 24 hours you've spent. So it would be so lovely to get to meet some of you in person. So we'll link the event in the show notes for you all. Now, time for our summary report of chapters 30 and 31 from our personal scribe informant, Karen.
So don't mind our fangirling because these chapters, we're so excited. We left off with Violet finally kissing Xaden, and after chapters of steamy tension, they finally give in to each other. They go from the desk to the armoire to the curtains to the floor in vivid detail. Okay, Rebecca. Violet's lightning powers are on full display, taking down trees outside and even setting the curtains on fire. Xaden uses his shadows to shield them and put out the flames, and we collectively fangirled over the magical intimacy of it all. Afterward, Xaden opens up about the 107 scars on his back representing the children of the rebellion leaders. He accepted the conscription at Basgiath to save them from execution. But if any of them betray Navarre, his life is forfeit. His scars are a constant reminder. Violet asks him to stay the night, and he surprisingly agrees. In the morning, she wakes up alone, but finds freshly picked violets on her nightstand. Then, Professor Carr arrives, commenting on how she can't even control her signet in her sleep. Mm-hmm. They fly out to practice her lightning signet, but Violet struggles. Her powers only respond to heightened emotions. Taryn asks, should I get the wing leader? And suddenly, Xaden pops into her mind, asking why she's so far away. She tells him she needs to summon lightning, and he floods her mind with images from the night before. It works. She successfully wields lightning. Later, Xaden helps her clean up the destruction they caused in her room, and they find a letter from her dad about the importance of folklore. Cryptic much? As they discuss their complicated relationship, Violet says they can only continue if she is ready to risk her heart. Flash forward a month, Violet is having lunch with her found family. Eyeing Xaden across the room, they flirt back and forth until Violet makes Xaden choke on his food with her spicy thoughts. A few more weeks go by, and it is reunification day, the day of Brennan's death and the execution of the Marked One's parents. Violet is overwhelmed by grief in the middle of battle brief and telepathically asks Xaden to take her to bed. When he hesitates, she nervously asks if he is seeing someone else, and he quickly denies it. That evening, at the formal Reunification Day celebration, King Tari, General Sorengale, and General Melgren approach Violet, questioning her powers and making jabs about Xaden's loyalty. Liam supports her through it all, despite his own grief. King Tari presses Violet on Xaden's whereabouts before General Sorengale distracts him. Then Dane helps sneak Violet and Liam out of the party. Violet reaches out to Xaden mentally, tells Liam she adores him, but to leave, and finds Garrick and Bodhi standing by the parapet, warning her that Xaden is too mentally unwell for company. Undeterred, she steps onto the parapet, declaring herself as his.
Let's fucking go. Yes, we finally made it. With that, drum roll, Dragon Riders, because things are officially getting spicy and chaotic in chapters 30 and 31. Desks are breaking, feelings and signets are igniting, and even armoire doors aren't safe from Violet and Xaden's tension. So this is our first smutty chapter. And let's be real, we're a romantasy, bookish besties podcast. So we are very pro-smut around here.
Oh, yeah.
And for good reason. I think it is a very important part of the romantasy genre, though, to be clear, there are great books without smut as well.
For sure. It adds that extra layer of magic and intensity to the romance that we're already obsessed with.
Exactly.
I feel like smutty books have become the space where women, especially, but really all readers in general, get to explore their desires and fantasies without shame.
Very much so.
There's something like really powerful about that. And it's like reclaiming agency and saying, yeah, I want to read about this, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Smut is part of the escapism, right? Like, it's fun, it's sexy, and it's a way to explore fantasies through fiction. There is a very outdated idea that romance or smutty books are frivolous or lesser than because they involve sex, but I think when done right, that it elevates the story and gives it depth.
Yes. Just because they're about romance or include sex doesn't mean they are any less valuable.
Right. Well, and the reality is these books are providing a space to explore themes of consent, which is very important to me, pleasure, and boundaries in ways that can be incredibly empowering because this is fiction. But especially when it's written by women, right? Those things are a space for us to be in charge of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's so key in romantasy, especially. And the way relationships are built often challenges traditional gender roles and the societal expectations about sex.
That's what I was trying to get at. That's a good way to put it.
I think that these books are showing that pleasure and agency are a part of the story, not something that you should shy away from.
Right. Well, and smut isn't just fun. It is, but it's not just that. I think what we're trying to get at is that it's a crucial part of the story for readers like us. And expanding on that, it adds a layer of intimacy and the tension, right, that we've talked about this whole book so far, that you don't always get from just emotional connection, though they do go hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
And you're right. We should celebrate it instead of diminishing it. I just think that smutty books resonate with readers on a variety of levels for a variety of reasons. And honestly, who doesn't love a well-written sex scene?
Exactly. We are not just here for the spice. It's also about the moments that contribute to character growth, the stakes of the story, and yes, of course, for us, the swoon factor.
Yeah.
Sex is a part of the human experience, and these stories reflect that in just a really authentic way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because that's what I felt like I was missing in YA as I became like an older adult. That's an interesting way to say it. As I age. I'm not that old, guys. But, when you come out of even college, I just started transitioning out of YA, just thinking like the relationships weren't hitting intimately as high for the relationship itself, not for just sex scenes on a page. I think that's a big reason that I find myself so at home in the new adult arena. But I think it's also important to say that, and it's refreshing to see how smut in books is evolving. So authors now are way more intentional about showing consent and healthy dynamics, especially when the stories are told by women, which just makes it all the better.
Women know what women think is sexy.
Yes. Female gaze.
And the woman's pleasure is kind of centered in this. And I just love that. And there's no shame in us reading for both the emotional highs and the spicy bits, because we love it all.
Here for all of it.
And discussing those scenes in a romantasy setting makes it even better, because we get both emotional and supernatural fireworks.
Exactly. Or lightning bolts. Guys, I love to be cheesy. We fangirled over a variety of different aspects to this series specifically, right? Like, you see me get maybe not equally as excited, but really engaged with theories and world building and lore and foreshadowing and Easter eggs and all those things. Like, for me, I think that it's such a well-rounded, satisfying in another form of the word, series for me. Like, it touches on everything that I feel like I want out of a series. I think we've made enough room that it's clear that we're not just fangirling over the smutty parts, but we warned you guys that it was coming. So, jumping in, yes, the sheer tension, the tension that we've been talking about this whole season between Violet and Xaden finally exploded, imploded, snapped, all of the above, literally, in such a rewarding way. From the first kiss, the raw emotion, the way Violet is pushing Xaden to stop holding back, all of it, it's such a great payoff.
Oh my gosh, yes. That "stop telling me what I want" line. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Because Violet is all about taking ownership of her decisions here and couldn't be happier with them.
I was really proud of her when she said that.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. I love the consensual conversations. But he was starting to get on my nerves a little bit by telling her what she does and does not want. Sir, it's so painfully obvious. Can you just stop holding back? And then he did. He got there. But it took her saying that, and I was very proud of her. And I also really love that their banter is still there, even in the heat of the moment. It's not just lust, like Violet keeps calling it. It's layered with so much emotion, and we know better of both of them just how emotionally invested they actually are. And at first, Xaden was still doing this whole "you don't want this" act, which is so ironic because he's someone who can literally read intentions, yet he's always second-guessing hers. In these sexual moments.
Exactly. I just had a thought. Maybe because she hasn't admitted it to herself and she's calling it lust, he's seeing that intention from her, even though it's not true.
If we took that to be what it is, which I would be fine with that, she also, I think, has a much deeper intention even after it. And I wondered how much, because Rebecca has said that Xaden hears not all, but a lot of the spicy thoughts she has about him. And she's his thoughts, right? Like, so then we get into this whole, like, okay, is it direct thoughts? Because if it's her thoughts and her interpretation of an intention, but if it's a subconscious intention, this girl knew she was going to fall. She even said to him, if we keep doing this, I'm going to fall. So, like, then you kind of get in the weeds of, did he sense her intention if he went through with this, and that's why he was saying she didn't want it? I think I'm going to take it for face value at he was likely just trying to protect himself, especially considering he is in love with her and is like scared that I could even see him in this scene being like, I'm in love with this girl. She wants me because she's attracted to me, but she doesn't want more than that. And even if she couldn't have it.
Right.
So you don't want this is maybe him trying to convince her, quite literally, not like actually thinking she didn't, but trying to give himself an out. Because if she said, yeah, you're right, I don't want this, well, then he has more enough grounds for self-control to take a step back. So I think that's actually where it comes from. And I'm not as upset about that.
Yeah.
I've given some credit. I'm not actually upset about any of this, honestly, when it comes to Xaden. I think he cleared up that pretty quickly.
And then Violet just lays it all out there, saying, I only want you, Xaden.
Yes.
And that's whenever you can feel him break. Like we were just saying, we already know he's in love with her. He already knows that he's in love with her. And he's scared for Violet's reputation for the other reasons he's scared. I think he thinks that he's not good enough to be with her as well.
Oh, wait, you just made me think of something. That's probably true. It is true, partly, because he says that, and we read ahead a little this week while we were trying to get this to be able to record this. We went into the next chapters, and he says to her later that she talks about being jealous of Imogen and thinking maybe she'd be a better fit for him, and he said that he can relate to that. She asks him what he means by that later, and he says Dane. And so I'm like, really, Xaden? Okay. But my first thought before he clarified Dane when I saw it was, oh my God, he meant Liam. Then, because of our conversations before, but then he clarified Dane. And so, yeah, I could definitely see him being like, no, she needs someone who is not going to pull her into a revolution, essentially, or all these qualms. He says it later, he doesn't think he has humanity. Like, it's debatable to him. So when you truly love someone, you want what's best for them, and he likely doesn't think that he is. So, baby boy.
But after she tells him this, that she only wants him, he loses all self-control and can't hold back anymore. Hot. So hot.
Yep. And how he switches from calling her violence to Violet. It is such a small shift, right? But it is so intimate. And somehow to me, in those moments, her actual name feels more personal and intimate than the nickname even does. Like, it does more for me than the nickname. And I was surprised by that. Because I initially loved the nickname Violence. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. They have like this inside thing. But the more he actually refers to her as her real name, gets me. That gets me.
Oh my gosh. The shift. Oh my gosh. It says so much in these moments when he calls her Violet.
And why is that? Because you'd think that the nickname would. Is it smart? But
it's not jokey. He's been calling her Violence in like a flirty, bantery, jokey way. But whenever he says her name, it's almost
serious.
Like he's calling her my love.
That's it. That's the perfect. Yeah. No, you nailed it. That is the perfect. It is the equivalent to me as my love. And that, you nailed it. Now, in Violet's head, she thinks this kiss, this minute, this man. How satisfying a parallel to my house, my chair, my woman.
Oh my gosh. Not quite as hot, but the parallels. And we've caught the parallels so much throughout this book so far. And I think this one is my favorite. The three.
I gasped when I read it, because you're not going to catch that, and you're not even going to think about that. It wasn't a significant line for Violet necessarily. Yeah. So you're not going to think about it. I don't know if it was meant to be a parallel. I think it was likely just a writing style for Rebecca's, but it's a line you read and your mind just flashes forward to that scene in Iron Flame, which does make it hotter. And so I just had to share that with you guys. I literally was stoked when I came across it and added it to the outline.
It's so good.
I do have to mention how obsessed Xaden is with Violet's hair. Now, there are theories that the specific scene in this chapter and how he lingers on her hair, how much he's obsessed with it, implies that he knows why her hair is silver. But I think, personally, that he's just completely captivated by it.
Yeah.
It's so different from everyone else's in the Quadrant, or really anyone. I don't think silver hair is a thing, because we pointed out that how significant it is that there's a character in Iron Flame who has that strand of silver hair. So it is like unlike anyone else's, right? And that is symbolic for Violet's individuality that he very much so loves. But we also have to remember that most of the other riders in the Quadrant cut their hair short. So that is not something that he sees often.
I think that he's just captivated by it. I don't think he knows. He might know why it's silver, but I don't think that's why.
I don't think that's a secret that I hope that he has.
Yeah.
I know that he's full of them, but
no more secrets.
I would hope that if it was personal to her, that he would share that. And maybe it's a situation where there's like an old Tyrish fable that talks about silver hair that he hasn't shared. Okay, maybe that.
What if his mom has silver hair? That's weird.
I feel like he would have said something that would be oh no. I really hope that's not the case. I'm going to wipe that from my memory.
Me too. I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody listening.
But you know what? I appreciate that your mind is making connections, just not quite that one. Okay. All right. I freaking love this chapter. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to talk about the way that their powers are integrated in this scene. Xaden uses his powers to protect Violet from the debris that she is causing with her lightning. Are you fucking kidding me?
Before anything even happens, it's like he can tell what's about to happen before it happens. And so he's like,
his
instincts.
She did that
cover. Yes.
I wonder, no, you can't do that with objects. I wonder where that like quick reflex comes from. But I guess, because we're still learning about his shadow signet, so can he sense shifts of objects in the environment without looking from his shadows? Like how humanized are these shadows? Because you're right. I kind of thought of it as simultaneous, but even if it's simultaneous, he had to have had a split second to make that decision. Like, that's so interesting to think about. But regardless, I fucking love it. We talked about appreciating smutty scenes pretty in depth already, but there is the integrating powers is like a whole nother level because it's just so unique and interesting, and it just adds so much to it. It adds so many levels.
Yeah.
I just love it. But
especially that she's literally putting them in danger as well during this.
Literally, she just we have to remember, she just officially manifested it today, which I'd like to point out is kind of symbolic that she's really, really brokenhearted about her first use of her signet, so she thinks, even though it was actually with Xaden. She doesn't know that until the morning after. But now that day and that use of it is not the only use of it. And if they weren't in a death college, maybe not the healthiest escapism for their relationship at that moment. But I cannot blame a girl because, as she says, you have to take every moment because they could lose their lives. Anyways, adding on to that, the telepathic connection while they kiss, again, next level. Violet even says, quote, "The intimacy of it pushes me to the limit of pleasure and then right over it." It is not just about physical connection and cohesiveness here that makes this scene chef's kiss. It's their minds too. It is how connected they are, like all the way around, and it's so intimate. It's fantastic.
It's amazing. Yeah. The way that they connect is so much deeper than just the attraction,
right?
Which obviously was instantaneous whenever they first saw each other. And this whole scene, like we said, becomes a literal storm with the curtains catching on fire. Everything is breaking. It's wild and it's chaotic and it's just them. And that feels so symbolic.
Oh, yeah. Especially with what's coming. Very much so.
Plus, along with our conversation of consent, the little pause for the fertility suppressant conversation right in the middle of all the chaos. This was so unexpected, but it is refreshing to see them have an open and mature discussion about this. And it's another way that they are taking care of each other and being responsible, even whenever everything is heating up.
Right. Well, and I will say it did take me off guard. The first read, I was like in the zone and then, wait, what is that? Oh, okay, great. But you know what? I can appreciate healthy communication. And I do think it was a great display of healthy communication can be hot. And it is hot to be responsible. So I appreciated that.
It took me out of it a little bit with a little giggle of also nobody wants quadrant babies running around.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, if one did get pregnant, do you think that they would get kicked out of the writer's quadrant?
Ooh. I don't know if this says anything about Violet specifically got pregnant, but
any of them.
Xaden's grandfather, he died before he graduated from the Writer's Quadrant, which meant that Xaden's dad had to have been born in that era. I don't know what year he was. So like if he could be third year and then got someone pregnant and then...
Or what his grandmother did. She may not have been in the quadrant.
Does anyone ever get kicked out? I think it's death or... I think that's what it comes down to is you either die or you stay a writer.
Okay.
I think you can retire, but in the actual quadrant itself, I think they just tell you, like, I don't know if they'd have the compassion to pull you. But then if you're a powerful...
Different for a woman, too.
I think it also depends on if you've already bonded a dragon, because they want, and that's why writers can get married right out of graduating, because they want, like, a powerful bloodline. They want writers to have more writer babies.
And then if a woman is pregnant, how is she going to be in battle too? Are they going to...
Right. So I was thinking like the sparring mat, like stuff like that, would they even survive? So it doesn't really answer necessarily anything, just to say it's probably not something that hasn't happened. They clearly didn't require a fertility suppress, because that was one of my questions, is that required across the board that they all take it? Which could be also a little bit problematic consensually, but clearly his grandfather wasn't. Anyways, that's all. But good questions. I mean, I don't know even if Rebecca thought that far, which is kind of the case with some of the things we're going to talk about, and that's okay.
We do tend to do that.
Yeah, and that's the way that's okay with me. If we get to a revelation that is connected, then awesome. But if not, it's part of the fun. So
yeah.
So after all of that, we get the intense reveal, partially, of Xaden's scars, each of them representing a marked one whose loyalty he has taken personal responsibility for. And I just want to say that I think that the timing of this reveal was actually really good and really symbolic on Xaden's part, right after they've been so vulnerable physically together. Now he is emotionally being vulnerable, which was also a sign that he was in this deeper than just like a one-night stand. But it also makes that revelation itself hit even harder. He's like finally letting her see a part, just a small percentage of the weight that he's been carrying. It's clearly something very difficult for him to talk about.
Yeah, those scars are such a heavy revelation on a first read. And it just makes his emotional walls make so much sense.
Well, and it makes his whole "don't fall for me" line even more heartbreaking. He's trying so hard to keep her at a distance, to protect her, but you can see that he is already far too deep. Violet's also realizing at the same time that she might be too. Like it's classic Xaden, wrapped in his need to shield her from his own darkness, or his own shadows, if you will, even though he knows he's already in love with her.
That changed my perspective on that line, and it made this whole scene so much more meaningful. Yeah,
fully agree. It really did. Thank you, Rebecca, for releasing Xaden's POV of chapter 27 before we got to this.
So happy
she did
about
that for us, guys, all of us. Yep,
she
did
actually
that for us.
listens.
She said, wait, they need to know how to interpret this. And that leads us to the fact that Xaden agreed to stay the night with her. And the morning after, because he had to leave for a leadership meeting, he left her freshly picked violets on her nightstand so that she wouldn't wake up alone.
Oh, what?
Like, are you kidding? It's so sweet. What a small but huge romantic gesture that's in clear contrast to the night before when he was all, "I'm dangerous, stay away." I think this really showed Violet herself, not just us, right? Like, this was a turning point for her, that he was so much more emotionally invested than he was verbally letting on, which was probably great timing because she deserved to know that it wasn't just her that was going to fall. Eventually, she made that connection.
Yeah. I just want to know when he had time to do that also.
That took planning. It took effort, right? And that's what's so small but huge about it.
It was
Can you just picture
that? So freaking sweet. Someone who is like detached and doesn't want her to fall for him, like he said, wouldn't have done that.
Right.
There's no way.
If you think about the scene, I know this is one that a lot of fans wanted in a bonus chapter, was seeing him. And if you, Karen, I don't know how many times I'm going to get on to you about not reading the Xaden POV of
I didn't know
BB.
they existed.
Well, you haven't had time because we've been doing nothing but this podcast, but I'm talking about the fan fiction, not the bonus. Yeah, you didn't know until me, but it has a really great scene where he does get up and he leaves early and he goes and picks her flowers. And I think it had some nice Sigale teasing, if I'm recalling correctly.
100% she teased him. I could see her just being like, "Oh, don't fall for me and you're picking this girl flowers," or something like that.
I think that's a crazy contrast in his actions versus his words. And it just demonstrates so much about how torn he is. Just, but we have to have that, right? Like, again, we can't have these like completely mature, 100% communication skills and emotional intelligence and in touch with feelings characters, because then there'd be nothing on the page after 3 pages and the whole relationship is the same.
And love and lived happily ever after.
Which is great. But yeah, we got to appreciate it.
But Violet hears a knock at her door, and it was Professor Carr. And he came to her room to begin her signet training. And this made me laugh because whenever he commented how it seems like you can't even control your signet in your sleep, because she had several trees on fire outside. Her room was a mess. Such a great balancing moment to the ones that follow when Carr takes Violet somewhere far enough away so that she can practice without hurting anybody.
Right.
Which, again, reiterates her fears with this signet that she will hurt others or that she could be used as a weapon.
Right. And we know now that Carr, because of Iron Flame, wasn't really training her to understand her signet for personal development, but to be used as a weapon. Intentionally or out of ignorance, likely intentionally, but Violet does realize just how connected her powers are to her emotions in this scene. And with that, we get what is arguably Taryn's most iconic line. Should I get the wing leader?
Oh my gosh.
Which makes me cackle every single time I read it without fail. I love that line. And everything that comes after.
Oh, yeah.
And partly what makes it so funny is that Taryn knows about their shenanigans and is teasing Violet. I do have to point out that Rebecca has said in her mind, the dragons go off in their own little world and are not paying attention when their riders are getting it on. But it's not like Violet wasn't thinking about it that next morning or like all day. Who could blame a girl? So then Taryn is kind of having to think about, like, at some point he's got to be able to like balance blocking it out. But my point is he knows, right? Yeah. And I just know that he and Sigale were gossiping all about it. Without fail.
They're like, freaking finally, these kids were getting on our nerves. But
how awkward.
Oh my gosh. I love the line that Taryn says. And I love it, especially in the audiobook, where the voice of the actor is like laughing as she says it. So you can just kind of picture Taryn being like, should I get the wing leader? It kind of brought it to life for me from just reading it on the page. Ugh, it was so good. I just love the playful banner Taryn has with Violet. Oh, so good. But he knows that Violet's signet is connected to emotion. So he, 1, could be jokingly serious, or 2, is just trying to get a rise out of Violet.
Right, which either way, it does work. And I guess at this point, he would have had to mentally block out because Violet seeks out Xaden in her mind. And I just love every scene where the powers, the bond stuff, it's incredible. And Xaden notices, and she explains she's struggling, channel her lightning, you guys all know. And then Xaden proceeds to flood her mind with images of herself and his own emotions from the night before. With their dragons present. They just have no, I guess at that point, they're just so used to them being there. But a moment of silence for this scene. It is a top 3 for me between Taryn and Xaden's lines, which are just multiple iconic ones that are through the stretch. And I do not use that word lightly in this situation. And then Xaden putting his thoughts into her mind. The intimacy of all of it is absolutely incredible. And what a lovely way for Rebecca to give us readers a peek into Xaden's perspective of the night before.
It's so good, and it is one of my favorites as well, especially that he not only sent her his point of view. He sent her those images, but she could also feel how badly he needed and wanted her. Oh my gosh, hot.
It was such a great way for Rebecca to let us in on that. And
oh yeah.
Thank you, good. Rebecca. You could do a little more of that if you'd like. Now, later that day, Xaden comes by Violet's room to help clean up, and they have several meaningful conversations that give us so much more insight into Xaden as he's opening up to Violet for the first time, really, to this point in the books. He's not purely ruthless. He has compassion and humanity, even if he struggles with claiming that.
Again, our not so morally gray character, and everyone else sees him as cold and ruthless, but these amazing little moments like this show us that he's really far from that.
Yeah, right. I think we might see him get more gray, but as of right now, he's the lightest shade. Now, Violet does try to get him to open up even more by asking him about where he was that night. She saw him with Garrick and Bodhi in the courtyard, and he gives her the partial truth by admitting he was in Athman. This was huge. It is the first time he's willingly shared dangerous information with her, which is a great display of trust. But we know where that leads.
Unfortunately, we do. He is starting to trust her, but there is a hesitancy, which you understand later because this moment is a huge butterfly effect. It really shows that it's not about not trusting Violet. It's about the danger of the truth getting out.
Exactly. It's not safe for anyone for her to have all of the information, and he still thinks that. So I'm kind of scared to know what else he could have told her that we should be grateful he didn't, because we do see how high the stakes are. We don't know at that point on a first read, even though I do want Violet to know all of the secrets so that I do too. Yeah. I think we would have no more characters. Right. So, because we see where that leads with Liam anyways. And then there's the moment when a letter from Violet's dad falls out of the binding of the Book of Fables. She describes this feeling as gravity shifting. Again, there's that suspicious gravity reference. It's usually for Xaden.
Yeah.
But then there's that. So, just everyone who thinks that she's going to have like gravity manipulation, which would be fucking cool. I'm not convinced of it. That's some evidence there. The letter itself is loaded. So he addressed Violet as being in the Scribe Quadrant at that point. So he did not think that she would be in the Writer's Quadrant, nor hence a writer. He hints that the folklore in the book is true in like the most obvious way possible. I don't understand how she missed that, and expresses faith that Violet would make the right decision when it came down to it. The fact that he wrote this letter and hid it in the book makes me wonder if he knew he might not be alive to tell her in person. Like I've said before, I think he was assassinated. So I'm wondering if maybe he saw it coming and that's why he left the letter.
That's a really good point.
A sad one, but
it's a very sad thought. But he also had a heart attack a few years before he died. I was thinking that maybe he was worried it would happen again, because that is something that people that have had heart attacks have to worry about.
Right.
Is it happening again? And he wanted to guarantee a way that she would know if he wasn't there to tell her himself. I'm also kind of convinced by your theory of him being...
That just meant he had double the reason.
Yeah.
So the letter is actually not that surprising then.
Yeah. Now, what do you think he meant in the letter by making the right choice?
I think that he knew she was going to find out about how Navarre was changing history and leaving innocent civilians outside of the wards to die, while selfishly staying under them and then lying to their citizens about Venom being real at all. So in this situation that Violet was to become a higher ranking scribe, we know this because her mom says it to her in Iron Flame. She essentially didn't want Violet to be pulled into the upper ranks and know all of that information because she would have burnt the entire thing down. So because she would have had two choices, right? Do what her mom did and support the harm that Navarre is causing, leaving innocents out, lying to their like all of those things, right? Which is not Violet. It's not in Violet. Or she could do what someone like Brennan did, and as I suspect her father was likely trying to do within the Scribe Quadrant, and say that this is wrong, and then figure out how to fix it, which would, again, go back to actually burning down everything that Navarre stands for, coming back to what her mom said. So I think that's the choice.
It makes sense, and I am just dying to learn more about what Violet's dad knew before he passed and what he was doing about it, because I think that's going to change our perception of Violet's dad if we know how much he knew, what he was doing about it, and which side he was on.
Yeah, I'm fully convinced that there's no reality in which he was on Navarre's side, quote unquote. I think that's why he taught Violet so early on about the fables, gave her the book, like left this letter, right? Like I think those are all huge clues to tell us he was maybe not on a quote unquote side, but he knew that something was wrong. Not even just something, but he knew all of the harm, all of the bad things that they were doing, and wanted to do something about it. And I think we talk a lot about Papa Sorengill's research, right? But I also kind of hope he left a diary of some sort, because it's not just his research, right? I want to know what he thought outside of his research about Feathertails, right? Like I want to know what were his thoughts, what steps did he take?
That's really what I want to know. What was he doing about it? And it would be
that got him
book
assassinated.
Of Papa. Oh my gosh. The book of Papa Sorrengill instead of the book of Brennan.
Oh, wait, that's cute. No, I really hope she does that. Especially if we're not getting like a mini book. What do we call those things? Novellas. That's such a pretty name too. I should remember it. But yes, add it to our list of things we want. That's probably a top one for me, honestly, aside of the dragons.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Violet shares this letter with Xaden, who knows about the venom, but chooses not to tell her. He even asks, what do you think he was trying to tell you? Playing along with the idea that it's all just fables by specifically mentioning him being told the fables by his dad growing up in like a playful way. And I just feel like this was the perfect opportunity for him to be honest, but he does hold back, which I guess I understand, but...
Yeah, I think that he was trying to guide her to the truth on her own terms, and also hoping that she would be more open to believing when the time comes, like leading her to the truth cautiously.
Yeah, that's probably my interpretation too. It's one of those moments as Violet, I would have looked back and thought, like, you had the perfect opportunity there to tell me, and you chose not to. That's so frustrating. But I also get it. So Violet moves on really quickly from this, changes the subject, and Xaden hints at them having sex again. I'm really proud of her because she is very emotionally aware of herself, like in touch with her own feelings, or knows herself well enough to know when she would fall. And she's really, really close to the edge. And she straight up tells him, nope, we're not continuing this until I'm ready to risk my heart if you are not wanting me to fall for you. And I just want to say that I'm very, very proud of her for finally realizing all of the things we keep pointing out. Like, girl, how did you not see that he was making you a saddle? Like all this stuff. She did. She acknowledges it here, which just saying I'm proud of her.
Yeah, I am too, because haven't we all been in a situation where we just want to be liked or to be desired, and we don't go through with our boundaries because we just want to have that feeling? Because she could have so easily just been like, okay, I can do this. I'm not going to fall.
Right.
Have sex again, continually do that, heartbroken later on. I'm so proud of her for that.
Right. And she holds out for like a month before she brings it up again. Well, she brings it up, and then I think it's like a month and a half after this.
Yeah.
So like she really does stick by it, which is one of her strengths. I wouldn't have been able to do the same thing. So that's all I'm going to say. So we flash forward about a month later, and we're treated to this hilarious scene where Violet is eyeing Xaden from across the dining hall, and they are flirt arguing through their bond, which is my favorite way that they do argue.
Yeah.
And Xaden accuses her of fucking him with her eyes. Before she goes all in, making him choke on his food when she describes exactly what she would do if he'd just man up and admit that there was something between them, which is also a favorite scene of mine from this book.
I think somebody responded in our Discord saying that they need like a bookmark quote from you saying, "This is one of my favorite scenes from this book, Hannah."
I didn't see that.
Oh my gosh, I'll just send you a screen. I have to go back and find it and send you a screenshot.
I love that because I catch myself saying it so much, and that it is basically the whole book at this point, right? That these are my favorite scenes. I definitely have like 3 favorite scenes that I say are my top favorite scenes in every chapter. But it also points out just how much this really is my favorite book. Like, I love this series so much. It's not like I'm just saying that. Then I'm showing you guys. Like, I'm showing you my favorite parts. It feels like I'm like, here, do you like it?
Yes.
Like,
you're not just saying that because you tell us when something is not your favorite too.
Oh, I got communication skills, but it reminds me of Taylor Swift with her stars. Do you like them?
Do you like them?
Do you like them?
That's a niche reference.
That is so niche. But you know what? That's what I need to, the bookmark is going to be. This is my favorite scene with Taylor's stars. Do you like them?
Do you like them? Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Even like a casual Swiftie is probably not going to have that bit of lore logged. So I'm going to have to track something down and put it in the show notes for you guys so you know what I'm talking about. I am not crazy. It is a thing.
It is. But back to one of Hannah's 500 favorite scenes. I agree, though. This is one of my favorites, too. And it's just perfection. And it's one of the most playful and intense moments we've seen between them because they just can't help but push each other's buttons, even when they're surrounded by everyone. And then, icing on the cake, Liam being so casual about knowing what they're doing. It makes it so better.
I like that addition too, because he's watching them, fighting a smile, and then rolling his eyes. He is such a balance, and I will never forgive Rebecca for what she's about to do. I read ahead, and I forgot just how quickly the rest of his life. It just... Not to take that whole... This is a fun scene, guys. I'm so sorry.
Why would you do that?
I didn't realize how fast it... It's like 2 weeks left at this point. And she's just throwing in those, like, moments that...
make us love him.
Yeah. I do love how he is in on the whole thing and gets both of them, Xaden and Violet, in ways that no one else ever could. And that is what I think that Rebecca is just stabbing us in the hearts with in this scene. Knowing what she was about to do.
It's honestly devastating. And Liam was one of the only people that was both of their friends. Oh, I'm talking about it in past tense. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry.
We've tried this whole time. And it's so hard to read the scenes and not think what was Rebecca's motivation with Liam. It was to break our hearts. She said she knew when she wrote him. So she knew in every single one of these lines what she was building up to. And so I can't not, even though it's depressing, mention them. But they do add a lot, and I can't falter, but I can, you know? So we get another time jump, and it's reunification day. Violet is mourning the anniversary of Brennan's death. So she breaks her own boundary and asks Xaden to take her to bed. And when he says no, she jumps to the conclusion that he must be seeing someone else, Imogen.
Yeah, I get why she's all confused and frustrated, because when they last left off, Xaden did want to take her to bed. And then she set the boundary.
Right.
And now she's going back on it. So it's like, why wouldn't he still want to? And it's all because Violet doesn't connect that it's the anniversary of his dad's death until later that night.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we know Imogen, like me, is in love with Garrick. Violet just doesn't know that yet.
Right. And in a first read, I remember getting so jealous for Violet over Imogen because we're also led to believe it as well. But nowhere close to how I felt about Kat and Iron Flame. I think that Rebecca just knows how to invoke that in me when it comes to Xaden.
She is so good at making us feel the way that Violet is feeling in these moments.
Right.
But I remember thinking that the Imogen thing was just Violet misunderstanding. I did, however, feel the exact same way that you do about Kat.
You connected that Imogen wasn't looking at Xaden?
Maybe not that. Maybe I thought maybe she had a crush on him, but I did not think that Xaden
would reciprocate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I had more faith in him.
That's fair. I just thought she's made me fall in love with this character, and now she's just going to Uno reverse it, but here we are. Throw in Dane. I thought, oh no.
Throw the book across the room at that point.
In the garbage. Kind of. If it was Dane, this would not be my favorite book anymore. Or it wouldn't have ever been. Anyways, that evening is the reunification celebration that King Tari is hosting, which in of itself is so awful. And Vi's little chosen family are all walking together. Again, I love the balance of the playfulness between them, specifically, though, how Liam hints at his crush on Jasenia, asking what scribes are into. And it's moments like these that make what's coming. I want to point out that this is the night before everything happens in Athben, I believe. So I think that all happens like bam, bam, bam. So this would be the last full night for him. Moving on from that, it just makes him losing him much more harder.
It's just making these Liam moments so bittersweet. And you can tell because we are getting sad talking about the good things about Liam. And we're like seeing him start to open up and to connect and just falling in love with him more and more. And I can't.
Yeah. No, I think he was my favorite character at this point outside of Xaden, of course, which was the point. And that made him being the spectacle at the party where everyone's seeing and reacting to his rebellion relic so negatively. Him being the recipient of that was all the more infuriating. Not that any of them would deserve it, but this whole event, right? It is absolutely a harsh reminder of what the day means for Liam specifically and all of the marked ones. It's literally a celebration of his parents' deaths. But he's still prioritizing Violet's safety and friendship, which is like perfect character, right? So selfless. Him saying, I go where you go, gets me choked up. And it sounds so much like Andarna, which kind of scares me. But we're not going to go there.
My gosh, you're so right. I love that Liam isn't looking out for Violet because Xaden asked him to. He said that Xaden would never do that. It's because he genuinely cares for Violet and he wants to protect her even if it means enduring this painful event.
That is because he is the perfect character. So then we get this conversation with King Tori, General Melgren, and General Sorengale that was like super unfair to Liam. But in this conversation, we do see that Violet was right about how her mother would finally be proud of her knowing she was just like her. That is until Violet covers for Xaden's absence and Lilith, General Sorengale, glares at her over it. But I do have to point out and give her a bit of credit here. When King Tori starts pressing harder about where Xaden is, Lilith seemingly cuts off that interrogation by saying, oh, look, there's Dane Atos. He'd be so humbled if you said hello. Which, why couldn't that wait until after this seemingly important conversation about this declaration that the king made about the March Ones being required to be there? Knowing what we do now about the 107 March Ones being a tierish custom, so it's not just pure cruelty on her part, knowing that she advocated against requiring the children to attend the execution of their parents, which is what literally they're celebrating now, and knowing the deal that she made with Xaden, which allowed all of the marked ones the chance to live at all, I think that this was actually Lilith giving Xaden the slightest bit of grace by cutting off the questioning with King Tori over why he wouldn't be at a celebration over his dad's death.
That's actually a really good point, and it makes me see this scene a little differently, because I don't think when I read it that I saw that General Sorrengail was cutting this off on purpose. Ooh, I like that point of view.
Of course, you don't know to, right? You don't think anything positive of her, but yeah, now I'm starting to come around to give her, and it doesn't do much, right? Like,
yeah,
she's still a harsh character, but it does show that she might not be quite as heartless towards Xaden as she seems.
Yeah.
So then Dane helps Liam and Violet escape the party, and Violet uses her bond connection to find Xaden, which is actually like kind of cool because they have like basically like a mental tracker of each other.
Oh my gosh.
Not in a creepy way.
Find my friends.
Yeah, but it would be a very great tool in battle. Violet finally realizes just how serious her feelings for Xaden have gotten when she describes herself as quote-unquote his to Garrick and Bodhi.
This is such a huge turning point, and it is about damn time. She is realizing that she's more emotionally invested than she has let on. As just a few pages ago, she was calling it lust.
Right.
Okay, Violet. But again, we are ending on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Which we kind of have to if we want to go this deep, right? Like, it's already such a long episode, and it's literally 2 chapters, but there's so much in it, so much to talk about, and that's what happens when you are covering 2 books in one, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, time to head over to the Healer's Quadrant to get a temperature check on our characters, our favorite moments and quotes. Starting with you, Karen, who was hot for you this week?
Obviously, Xaden, because he's Xaden. But in this set of chapters, specifically, that Liam tells Violet that Xaden would not make the children of the rebellion go to the Reunification Day celebration. And he just cares about them all so deeply. And that's very admirable to me. I love that. But also, Liam, because he went to the celebration because he vowed to protect Violet, and he kept his word.
As her friend, too, as a support. All of the, you covered it all. You also have all of my same knots, too, so take it away.
Okay, so I originally had General Sorrengail on this list, but I'm going to take her off because of what we talked about.
I spoke too soon. I didn't see. Okay, go ahead.
So King Tori and General Melgren, because of the way that they looked at Liam and the way that they were speaking to Violet about Xaden.
And like still slightly General Sorrengail, but
yeah,
she gets some props, right?
Yeah.
On to favorite moments, though. The Violets. The Violets of it all. And Violet's description of finding the Violets, quote, finding a jar on my nightstand with a handful of spring violets, my heart swells. I am in so much fucking trouble. And of course, you have my second one. I think I've already overemphasized it's a favorite anyway, so you take it away.
Of course, it's a spicier one, which is off-brand for me. I usually pick a wholesome moment, but Xaden sending these spicy mental images to Violet to help her wield.
That's the one. That's the one. Favorite quotes. Should I get the wing leader? Most iconic line from this book, I think. it is actually, I know different context, but kind of. I think that line outside of Xaden is the my house, my chair, my woman of Iron Flame. Like, I think it's the one that is that people
recognize
or think of when they think of Fourth Wing, because it's so good. Then Papa Sorrengail's, it only takes one desperate generation to change history, even erase it. Whew, I'm pretty certain that Rebecca said that was her favorite line, but I'd have to find that interview. And then you cover my next two as well.
Well, the one you just said shows how important it is if it's Rebecca's favorite. So, chills. But my first one is, there is nowhere in existence that you could go that I would not find you violence.
He has incredible lines.
That's so good. And then at the end of 31, when Violet says, I'm just his. It's so simple. Now, let's stop by the Scribe Quadrant for our Epigraph Analysis, starting with Chapter 30. Though not forbidden, cadets are strongly encouraged not to develop strong romantic attachments while studying in the quadrant for efficiency of the unit. Article 5, Section 7, the Dragon Riders Codex. Now, this one seems to be one of the more obvious epigraphs about what's to come in the chapter and the upcoming chapters, just setting us up for some external friction with Xaden and Violet's relationship for reasons that seem like unfair advantages or being distracted.
We don't really get to see that in play much, though, right? Like, but I guess it could be coming.
Yeah.
Because based on the little excerpt we've got from Onyx Storm, they're still training. And so I wonder how those roles of, he's still going to be like a superior officer, right? Like, not technically an officer, but those dynamics might still be at play. But yeah, it's definitely also saying it's frowned upon. It's trying to make it seem like that's why he's afraid for her reputation and not like he's leading an entire revolution. So,
right.
On to Chapter 31. July 1st, the anniversary of the Battle of Arisha, is hereby proclaimed Reunification Day and will be celebrated throughout Navarre on this date every year to honor the lives lost during the war, to save our kingdom from separatists and those saved by the Treaty of Arisha. Royal Proclamation of King Tori the Wise. That's propaganda, guys.
Yeah.
This one's pretty straightforward, but I do want to point out that this would only be the 5th or 6th anniversary, hence time that they have celebrated this day. And also just how appalling it is that they celebrated it all, but that King Tori requested, so required, all of the marked ones to be there. That is so cruel, but it's also a tactic to deter anyone else, not just the separatist kids, but anyone from rebelling. It's a reminder that Navarre won, and it's basically putting the marked ones on full display as symbols of that, and showing that even the kids are on Navarre's side. Ugh. Now, clearly, we know they're forced to be, but the propaganda, the symbolism in the propaganda is there.
It's icky, but I think Navarre's leadership is unable to see that they're the ones doing wrong here, because they already lack compassion for their own people. So they definitely have no compassion towards the children of the rebellion.
Well, I disagree, because I think that they know full well. I guess it depends on who you mean by leadership.
Narcissists can't see that they're on the wrong side, though.
It's a good point. But they're going to such great intentional lengths to hide it, changing history, burning history, restricting history, and reframe themselves in a good light. Now, that is over generations, right? As we reference back to Papa Sorrengail's comment. So it might not have been them, but as General Sorrengail has mentioned, there is a level of like classified information you then get access to. Papa Sorrengail even figured it out. I'm assuming, I guess. It's been implied, though. So I think they know full well what they're doing. I think General Sorrengail knows full well what she was doing, but she justified it by saying it was for her kids, and that's how they do it. They justify really bad for, selfish reasons, and you can find that to be morally gray or just straight gray, wherever you fall in there, but I think they know what they're doing. Specifically King Tory.
I agree, but I don't think that he would see himself as the bad guy. He sees himself as deserving of the power.
Doing it in the name of protecting people because they have the ward.
Protecting the people they want to protect.
Right.
Themselves.
How do you justify that? And I think that really comes down to what a lot of Rebecca is trying to point out in this series is humanizing the people that get lost in the way of others'
agendas.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. But then as we learn, there's context that these characters have, and that translates so well to real life where, yes, people can do a lot of wrong. I still think that they know, but I think they justify it. Yeah. And is that worse? Is it worse to know and then continue to justify it than to not know? And that's a rabbit hole for another day.
It is.
But good
Speaking
points.
of rabbit holes.
Yes, speaking of rabbit holes, time to join our riot as we take flight into our foreshadowing, overarching questions, and theories section. Now, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to rattle these off as best I can, starting with Violet's lightning. When Xaden first comes to her room, she's telling him that no one will dare to attack her now, that she can wield lightning. And then she says, "Do you think it works inside? I mean, how does someone wield lightning if there's no sky?" Which is fair to ask. But she does wield inside, which is how she set the curtains on fire. This was a clue all the way back here early in Fourth Wing. Well, I guess we're kind of late in Fourth Wing at this point, but that Violet was more than just a lightning wielder, as she doesn't need the sky to access her ability to wield lightning. She was the source of the bolt, not the sky. Which we hopefully will get clarification on that difference if it means that all other lightning wielders only got it from the sky. But I'm taking that to be very much so a distinction, which is why Rebecca would have had her question that. Because I've read other books where it's never questioned that it didn't need to be from the sky. So it felt intentional.
Yeah.
And also, sort of related, she calls Xaden's touch electric, just to really lay that foreshadowing of what her real ability is with it on super strong. Next, I noticed that Violet describes Xaden's scars as short, thin lines, too precise to be a whip, no rhyme or reason to their pattern, but never intersecting. It's just something I noticed it stood out, specifically the never intersecting part, because it seems significant, but I'm not quite sure what it means yet. Now jumping to when Professor Carr tells Violet, quote, "You're off archives duty until we can be sure you're not going to burn the place down." What did we talk about just earlier? Lightning and paper don't mix well. Trust me, Sorrengail, the scribes aren't going to want you anywhere near their precious books. This is both symbolic in that Violet's whole life has been books, but now her signet starkly contrasts with that. And seems like it could be foreshadowing that Violet will eventually burn some shit down. I meant literally here. But also figuratively, as we spoke about above. I don't think that literally would actually be the case because of how important books and history are to Violet. And we know Jasenia still has access to at least some text, and that Basgiath is still standing. That doesn't mean the archives are, though. It's just eerily worded.
Yeah.
Especially with how it has been emphasized repeatedly that the archives have a fire system something in place. So, I'm checking it off right now as noted if that comes back up in future books. Next, Professor Carr gives us some major foreshadowing about Intensics, explaining that they would have unfettered access to classified info, are a security risk to the entire kingdom, and that they shouldn't be allowed to live, further explaining the stakes for Xaden and why he was justified in not telling Violet sooner.
I give him a lot of grace for not telling her. And Taryn also straight up says that Dane doesn't count. That since his power is limited to touch, he can be more easily controlled. Though, as we've discussed, this also could be a nepotism exception as well.
Right. Or both, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is the colonel's son. We can control him better. So it could be a combination.
Yeah.
Now, Professor Carr also says Xaden and Violet, as a bonded pair of two of the most powerful dragons, are now the most coveted pair of riders in the kingdom, and gives a warning to, quote unquote, keep their loyalties clear, as they would be a formidable enemy that command could simply not afford to let exist. And all throughout Iron Flame, especially with Xaden turning Venin, was setting up for them to be exactly that, a formidable enemy.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Right?
They are the ultimate pair enemy.
Oh, and now, especially with him being Venin, like, he is quite literally like everyone's enemy. That's like a double whammy.
Oof.
Next, Violet tells Xaden that her father got cryptic and reclusive after Brennan died, saying she only got to spend time with him because she was always in the archives studying to be a scribe. Violet has said that his research is where he spent all of his after-hours time at. This line leads me to believe that he has some secret place in the archives that he went to for this. And I've said before, I didn't think it was in the archives. This has changed my mind, but I still am confused on how no one else would know where that was if he went there so frequently. I can't imagine that there's like secretive places that like the highest of the scribes wouldn't have known about. If they were in the archives, why has she not went to grab them? Because what would she do with it if her room was ever... But I don't know, like...
And she doesn't know how secretive it is right now.
Well, she doesn't want anyone getting their hands on it so that they can't know about the feather-tailed dragon secrets. So
Yeah.
I think that's what she was saying, like...
Once learning about Andarna.
Yeah, so maybe she's like, it's in safekeeping and I don't need that information, like, immediately till I have a plan. But then she never thinks that on page. So interesting, Rebecca. So there's going to have some threads that she's going to have to weave together to make that make sense. But now, let's talk about this description of the Book of Fables content that Violet gives us, going line by line, so buckle up and bear with us. The first one, the pages flutter as I flip through stories of an ancient kingdom that spanned from ocean to ocean and a great war among 3 brothers who fought to control the magic in this mystical land. Pause. The Great War is the huge war that happened over 600 years ago and led to the unification of Navarre. We've talked about it quite a bit. The one where the Isle kingdoms were allies and General Daramore decimated the barons, bringing the dragons and their eggs to settle in the Vale behind Bezgaeth, which included Andarna. So according to the fables, this all happened and was all over these 3 brothers. I do want to point out that this could be symbolic lore and not literally 3 brothers. I kind of doubt that. I feel like there were 3 brothers, but on to the next line. Quote, some of the fables tell stories of the first riders who learned to bond with dragons and how those bonds could turn on the rider if they tried to consume too much power. So the first riders that we're told of are the quote-unquote first 6, and this makes it sound like some of them burnt out from consuming too much power from their dragons. That seems like it's going somewhere. Rebecca doesn't give us all this for nothing. That's going to come back up. Next line, others talk of a great evil that spread across the land as man became corrupted by dark magic and turned into creatures known as Venin, who created flocks of winged creatures called Wyvern and scourged the land of all magic in the thirst for more power. So the fables referenced here would have taken place long before the first writers because the Venin already existed before the unification of Navarre. Navarre quite literally formed their country on the premise of keeping their people safe under the wards from the Venin, as we understand it. Between these two books, that's what we're led to believe.
Yeah.
That's not to say they don't have ulterior motives.
So we've been told. This is what the history says as of now.
Well, this is in the fables. So, you're right, but piecing together pieces of history from,
Right.
So we kind of have to find like that middle ground.
Right.
It goes on to say, another talks about the dangers of wielding power from the ground instead of the skies, as one could easily start drawing magic from the earth and eventually be driven mad. All right, stay with me here because I am so excited about what I'm about to talk about. You guys have no idea. Wielding power from the ground is what turns you Venin. Wielding from the sky is referring to channeling power through dragons.
Yes.
Remember how Rebecca said it's like two different outlets of the same electricity. One, you plug your hairdryer in, another, you plug your straightener in, but they both pull from a finite amount of magic, which is why Venin are referred to as draining magic from the lands. They are using up the same magic that the dragons rely on to survive through different outlets, okay? Earth, sky. That's important. Because throughout both Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, we are told that Violet can harness the power of the sky and that she can command the sky to surrender its greatest power. And if I'm not mistaken, were those lines not from Venin? Why would they not be talking about the earth? Why would Venin be referencing the sky? So I have to check on that part, but I'm pretty certain that's the case. Now, a lot of people have thought that this was referring to Violet's ability to wield lightning sky, right? But based on this distinction, she would be commanding and harnessing the power of dragons. And if we go back to the fact that Violet's signet isn't just lightning, but raw power, she is able to channel the purest and most direct form of dragon magic with her signet. That is what this is insinuating. Therefore, her signet doesn't take a specific form like all other signets, where that pure power that flows through a dragon takes one form of ice or memory wielding. Once the human has the ability to wield it, it is a form, but Violet is direct. That is what this is saying. I think it still classifies as like a theory because it's not been spelled out that way, but the connections are connecting. And this is what they are connecting to say. Now, I don't know if that means that she will basically be able to take the form of many signets with her power, as that might make her overpowered, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how, being said to be able to command the sky to surrender its greatest power isn't overpowered in itself. But I do think that her ability to kill Venin is connected to this.
Yeah.
And that she will be able to channel more pure dragon magic than anyone else ever has. And that is what all of those references are setting up. I know that's a lot.
I have a lot of thoughts.
Let me hear them.
First, that is kind of making me think that we've talked about like her maybe being partially dragon or having like if her mom ate dragon egg and gave her that kind of same, not DNA, not where she's like part dragon, but giving her dragon power. It kind of makes me think that that could be a reality because how else would she do the pure power from the dragons and the purest power? Also, the overpowered thing, it kind of goes out the window. Rebecca has said, like, she doesn't really like overpowered main characters, but Violet is literally being set up to be the most powerful writer that has ever existed. So my thought with that is that she just didn't want us to expect another powerful signet from Andarna. So she got her most powerful signet from Tarn. And that is going to be extremely powerful. Maybe she just didn't want us to expect too much from her bond with Andarna.
I actually like that.
Yeah, that's kind of where my brain leads me with that, because there's no way Violet's not overpowered. Like, I think it's perfect, and I think that it's necessary for her to be that powered, but she's the most powerful. Like, there's no other way around that, and that she is the weapon.
Yes, she is implied to be this great weapon that they've been looking for, right? I would be very surprised if it ends up being something physical that's not Violet, right? Rebecca has said that dragons need humans because they have opposable thumbs and can physically wield the signet, right?
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to express when I say that Violet is pure power, and it's almost like if Taryn himself was a human and didn't have to use a human to channel 2, it would be that same power he's already pulling. It's like it's skipping that modification stage to lessen for a human. She just is, I think, channeling directly from the sky. And that I think that this is a bit of a rabbit hole in itself, but if you talk about the theories around Violet's second signet, there's been a lot of speculation, rightfully so, that her second signet is amplifying other people. I am beginning to be convinced that that is not a second signet. I think it is her first. And I think that her pure power that she is embodying is different from other types of signets. And I think that we think of it as energy. She amplifies around her, which means that she can do more than just wield lightning. And I think that also could go for her doing multiple things that are like not electricity or lightning specific. Like they have even the way that she imbues the conduits. Like, I think it's going to be more than that. And this could explain that. It's a lot to understand because we have to think of like how Rebecca set up her magic system. But I hope that it makes sense. Now for the final line in Violet's description, quote, "One of the purposes of the fables is to teach children about the dangers of too much power. No one wants to become a venom. They're the monsters that hide beneath our beds when we have nightmares. And we certainly never want to try to control magic without a dragon to ground us." So all of this is more context and foreshadowing about finding out that Venom are real, but also for Jack. He did want to become a Venom, and it was not enough for him to have Bade to ground him.
No, I don't think any amount of power would ever be enough for someone like Jack and others who have chosen to become Venom.
Right.
It was a lot, and we went on a tangent a little bit. I want to go back to the 3 brothers because there was another thought that I had, and I don't want it to be true, but it kind of makes me think that we might see history repeat itself because we have 3 siblings here, Violet, Mira, and Brennan.
Yeah, that was my first thought as I was reading Fourth Wing for the first time. I thought, oh, that's so obvious. But if we take the logic of it, we would have to apply it everywhere. And it does go on to say eventually that one of the siblings is a Griffin rider. So could technically there be a 3-sibling thing that repeats? Sure. But the Griffin rider specifically stands out as not applying. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we will be exploring that specifically because there are lots of theories about it more as we go.
And finally, on page 402, during the reunification celebration, Violet says to Liam, quote, "Brennan would hate all of this. He was much more about getting the work done than celebrating its completion." And Liam responds, quote, "Yeah, sounds like." But then he cuts himself off. And this was foreshadowing that Liam knows Brennan, and he was about to slip up and say, "Sounds like Brennan."
I gasped when I reread for the first time after knowing what happens in Iron Flame and that Liam did know him. So,
yeah.
Now on to our overarching questions and analysis portion, talking about Xaden and Dane. Starting out with Xaden, we counted one scalp tickling. It happened on page 397 when Xaden enters Battle Brief. It's interesting, though, that he told Violet that he stopped doing it when he realized how much she meant to him, which we are far past at this point. But he also did say that it was seeing how hurt she was over Dane betraying her that was a factor. And that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's a little confusing timeline-wise. My thought was maybe he's trying to hold back, but old habits die hard.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a subconscious thing that he fully hasn't let go of. Or one of those moments where Violet is subconsciously sending her thoughts to him.
Yeah, it didn't really feel like it meant anything specific with that intention. Really, like there wasn't really anything right there that I felt like he was reading for. But as we've learned by his POVs, right, that there are things that he picks up on that aren't on page. I think that might have been another one. Now on to Dane. Guys, we think we've got it. The face cup of all face cups where Dane stole the Athben memory. I think it's important to say that at first, we didn't catch this because it's hidden so well. There is a month and a half at this point, time jump where Xaden had told Violet about Athben. And then we don't get any Dane interactions where he touches her face on page and then that month and a half, right? So this would be the one on page face cup. Or it happened off page. But I don't think so, because why would Rebecca do that when she's made such a big deal about him cupping her face, right? So we think that this is it. At the reunification party, Dane cups Violet's face and then very briefly has an interaction with Liam, joking about how Violet's always hated these things before Violet thinks, quote, Dane must read the tense lines of Liam's face because his smile slips when he looks back at me. So we're looking for an indication somewhere that says that he got this information about Athben. Based on what Dane says in Iron Flame, he got a flash of a memory with Xaden and his cousin Bodhi, who was a second year, which indicated to Dane that that was not Navarian orders to leave to go to Athben because they don't send second years. So at this point, what we think happened, not just him being sweet and letting Violet and Liam go from the party, we think he found out in that moment about Athben, knew that it was something traitorous going on or interpreted it that way, which, I mean, I guess it wasn't really too far off, right? And then sent Liam and Violet out of the party to go tell his dad about Athben. Because just a few hours later, say this happens at like 7 p.m., 4 a.m., something like that is when they get this emergency formation and are told about this new war game. Oh. And it's not like, you know, Karen and I, we talked about this a bit off of it because we were like, oh my gosh, we have to make sense of all this. It's not like his dad wouldn't have had time to plan this because we know based on the letter in General Sorengale's office that Athben was on the verge of being evacuated months ago. So it could have already been empty and he just had the perfect opportunity and knew it was outside of the wards so that they could be attacked by Venin. This kind of blew my mind. I think I'm still trying to process it, but you're convinced, right? It's this one. This is it.
I am convinced, and I like how our brains worked together to come to this conclusion because, and you pointed this out to me, Dane so quickly went from touching her to, oh, has she tried to escape? He was trying to get them out of there because
I didn't think about that part. Yeah, he was giving himself an out.
Yeah, how often does Dane send Violet off?
Out of his sights, away from him.
With a separatist kid.
When I first read it, before we talked, I really thought, no, if he had read it right then, he wouldn't have sent her off with Liam. That doesn't make sense. But Liam wasn't involved in that. And Liam is literally perfect. So maybe he just thought Liam didn't have anything to do with it. Nor would it matter at that point. I guess if he was standing right there, he needed to tell his dad no matter what. So he thought.
Right.
And I can't blame him. this is not what bothers me about Dane. We've covered plenty of what does.
Yeah.
I can understand why getting this information is so alarming to him. He still thinks that Xaden is after. Like, he doesn't know how much Xaden loves her. He doesn't know what's been going on with them. He thinks he still wants to kill Violet. So,
and he believes in the lie.
And he believes in the Navarian propaganda. Yeah, that's traitorous. What is he doing out there with the second year who's not going to be given orders to do that? That is something alarming. And it also makes sense as to why Dane wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have had time for his dad to share any plans about why he'd chosen Athman. He just knew that he was being sent there and was probably somewhat suspicious, but I'm sure he didn't think his dad was going to send him there to die.
I don't know, because he was also, this is next episode, but he's also very much trying to convince Violet not to go with Xaden.
We will get into all of that next episode. But I do want to say that I am 99.9% certain that this is the very last time Dane touches Violet's face on page. Or at all. Because she's not going to let him after the next day. So this is it. This is it. This is it.
Yay. Oh my goodness. Thank the Lord.
Thank the gods.
Thank the gods. Well, that wraps up chapters 30 and 31. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to join us for our next episode where we will deep dive into chapters 32 and 33.
If you are looking for ways to support us so we can continue to make high-quality content, please leave us a review, check out our Patreon, give us a follow over on socials, and share to all of your Fourth Wing friends.
As always, we encourage you to email us all of your thoughts, theories, and suggestions. Drop them below if you are watching on YouTube, or join us over on Discord.
Until next time, dearest fantasy readers, prepare yourselves for the final War Games as we continue our journey through the Empyrean series.